Hi guys, so another video. It was interesting because I was watching a film by Larry Clarke called Kids. Now it's gas because when my brother asked me yesterday, "What are you watching?" I was like, "Oh, I'm watching Kids." And he was like, "You're watching Kids on the laptop?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, I see." It's like, no, the movie, the 1995 movie by Larry Clarke. And he was like, "Oh, all right, yeah, gotcha." But yeah, when you tell your family you're watching Kids on the laptop, people get a little bit suspicious and like, yeah, pedo. So I had to clear that one up. But if you don't know, it's a good film. Like it's a cult classic. It's not going to win the Oscars, but it's thought provoking at least, And it was made in 1995. It might have been made. Well, it was released in 1995. It might have been made well before that. Some of the characters were quite young when it was being produced, but they weren't classically trained actors. A lot of them were just taken off the street and asked if they wanted to be in a film by Larry Clarke, and he's known for doing that, not working with proper actors. But it's basically following a lot of kids that are around 16, 17. They're skater dudes and they're taking drugs, they're drinking, having unprotected sex. I'm going to try and get this monetized, as they say, so I'll try and watch my language. But they're yeah, like just getting up to no good and doing what teenagers do. And I always get the sense watching movies from the 90s and early 2000s and series. And I've spoken about this before, but like a sense of nostalgia. And yeah, they were messing up, they were making mistakes and all, but they were living, and they were going out and just making fools of themselves. And it seemed really free. Like there was just, no responsibilities and life was very free. And that's the song always comes into my head by Supergrass, we are young, we are free. I love that song. It's such a great song, and lots of them give me nostalgia. But I think it's no coincidence that I came across this video today, and I'm going to just show you now. I finished watching it there, and I'm not going to show you the video because I know I can't replay the sound, but there's a nice video description. That's right here. It's by this man, Dr. or Professor Sam Vaknin, and he's a controversial character. The reason being that he is a diagnosed narcissist and seems hell-bent on proving that he's a psychopath. There's an interesting documentary about him. Is he a psychopath? He knew he was narcissistic and he tends to embrace it and kind of admit to it, but use it, to his advantage. And he seems to see it as a strength. It's funny hearing him speaking on the laptop, but when he's interacting with others, you can see how manipulative he becomes. So it's hard to like him. Well, I think it's interesting what he says, and I think the fact that he's narcissistic means that he's very matter of fact, and so as a result, you can get some genuine insights. He's not really bound by emotion because he's quite flat in emotions. It has to be said. I think he was diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder as well, so quite a flat emotional person. But he was talking, and this is the title of the video now. Warning to the young, silence when we are all gone. And what he's referring to there, that's just the channel, by the way, nothingness antidote to narcissism. But he's talking about Armageddon, and he finishes like it's the end speech. And you can check out the video if you want. That's the title of it, and there's the channel. But what he says is Armageddon is not a battle, it's the silence when we are all gone. Right. So interesting. And as he say, because he's quite flat and he tries to throw in little bits of humor, but he doesn't really attach much emotion to anything. It's just a matter of fact. This is how it is. I almost get a sense with him that he wishes he could feel regular emotions, but yet seems hell bent on proving that he's a psychopath, which, I don't think he genuinely wants that, but he's just very flat and can't experience proper emotions. But Yeah, he's an interesting character, all right. His PhDs have been speculated on and criticized, but that's he got really pissy about that in the documentary about him spending the day or living with the psychopath. It was called on Real Stories. So if you want to check that out, it's quite an interesting watch with an Australian director. Just so you know, he was exhausted by the end of it because this man doesn't seem easy to deal with. But he makes a lot of interesting points, and people under the age of 35 are walking dead who live in a dystopian hell. So you might say to myself, and you can read all this while you're going along. I don't think I'll waste any time reading through it, but it's right there with you. Um, and I'll just basically summarize what he said. So he keeps saying that you can perform good actions, but it doesn't matter if your emotional state doesn't match up to them. So you can get behind whatever cause you want, but it's not going to change who you are at your core. You need to work on that yourself. And he's talking about young people being dead, basically, the walking dead, as he calls them. And you've got to say he's right. Like 50% of them have never read a book, which I find staggering. 33.333%. A third of them are anhedonic. They're just flat. It's a symptom of depression where you don't get any pleasure, any joy, or anything from life. People have casual hookups and they don't attach any sort of sex to love, and relationships mean nothing to them. They don't get into relationships to just meet people and they bonk them and that's it. They're done. And I agree with a lot of what he's saying. There's no deeper meaning to anything that they do, is what he's getting at. They're flat, they're monotone, they have no hobbies, they have no deep intellect. You can't really engage them, you can't have conversations with them. It's all very true. Um, and so watching kids last night, I was kind of thinking a lot about the movie and what they're doing in it. Basically, is there's young lads going around talk and young girls as well, but the young lads are talking about getting with as many girls as they can and riding as many of them as they can, and that's the main aspect of it. That's the goal. And Telly, who's played by Leo Fitzpatrick, he he basically just says he wants to deflower as many virgins as he can, because that's a goal of his. And his teeth are all over the place, and gammy mine are as well. But he's kind of hard to understand. And even Leo Fitzpatrick, when I watched one of his interviews, said that Larry Clarke wanted someone who wasn't attractive because no attractive young man has to chase. Sorry, no attractive young man has to chase pussy. So interesting. But yeah, that's what he said, and it made me just start thinking about when I was younger and the amount of stuff that seemed absolutely pointless to me. Like lads would always be bragging over how many girls they kissed or ridden or whatever what they got from them, and you're kind of thinking, oh, okay, but I always wanted. Now, if I said this back then, people would start screaming, oh, that's gay. You're what's wrong with you? They'd say, oh, you're a puffer. Or I always wanted a more deep, meaningful connection, and that would have been seen as weird. And I thought that I was weird or I was the problem. But what he's saying here, it's very true. And I remember being out with a group of lads before, and they were doing nothing on the phone playing Flappy Bird or Clash of Clans, talking shite. One or two stupid phrases that they'd scream out. And to give you an example, do you remember that one? What are those? And you'd wear shoes and it's, what the fuck are those? It's just bullshit that they were quoting from a meme they'd seen or a video they'd watched, and it was so boring to me. I always like to put more thought and more meaning into stuff, and that was seen as weird. And so I agree with a lot of what he's saying here. And he says actions don't matter, the heart matters, motivations matter. They are negative, you are negative. even if you act positively, and you will be judged negatively. So I think that has to do with a lot of virtue signaling, people who pretend like they're very good people. And yeah, some of their actions might be good, but deep down they're not good people. Um, sure, even Donald Trump's given to charity, so what does that tell you? Yeah, it's worrying times that we live in. And I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so you can read the rest. It's there anyway, so I'm not going to read through all of it. It's quite insightful, and I already have read through all of it and watched the video, so I'm not doing that again. Plus, you can check it out yourself if you want, and I think it's very good. But going back to the movie, there I am. There, uploaded a new video in case you're looking. Sorry, just going to share my screen with you again. So this is the movie in case you haven't seen it. Make sure to share my screen now in a sec. Here we go. Yeah, so you've got that fella. Both those two lads are unfortunately dead. This lad died of his own, like he took his own life, and then this fella died of a cocaine overdose. Harold Hunter and Justin Pierce. And John Abrahams is the guy from Scary Movie. That guy there. But it was really tragic hearing about Justin Pierce. And, I often get quite nostalgic looking at stuff like this, but there's Rosario Dawson as well. Probably know her and Chloe Sevigny. I knew those two anyway. Um, Rosario Dawson's a very good looking woman, just FYI. Always, yeah, there she is. She's a good looking woman. But you look at it, and I know this is like underage drinking, and yeah, I've done plenty of that myself, but they're talking shite and they're just kind of living their lives, and you're kind of thinking it does give you a sense of my youth wasn't misspelled. I was going to say I misspelled my youth, not misspent. Um, well, that's a good one there. Actually, I like that quote. Just scrolling through, a wake up call to the world. Two thumbs up. Like it's not going to necessarily win any Oscars, but it's really thought provoking, And I was always good at English because I was using big words like that. But I lost a lot of myself as a kid because I had to fit into the mold of what other lads were like. Because what I was into would have been seen as more feminine, So being good at a sport, being good at rugby, which I genuinely liked and was good at, but I couldn't be myself because if I was myself, I get judged for it, because I think really deeply about stuff. I don't just think about a quick shag or you know, I've taken drugs and drank quite a bit, because it numbed just the monotony of listening to people. Like I've talked about this before, but three of my mates thought they were moving up in the world, and they moved out and they were living together, and they didn't seem to do anything, you know. Like they thought they were the big men moving out. One lad was kind of, he slagged off everybody else, and he was kind of seen as top dog. He put everybody else down, but two of the other fellas that I met up with, we went out, we did loads of different things. We went to the 40 foot in Dunleary, went swimming, we went to the Phoenix Park for a day out. We went out and about just for a walk and strolled down by the Grand Canal because they were near Portobello. We were chatting to some young ones that lived nearby who were really nice and really good looking, and they were studying. They were wine drinkers as well, so classy for that age group. But they turned to me afterwards and said, "That's the most we've done since we moved in." I was like, "What, you haven't been out or done any of this at all? This is the first time doing it." And they're like, "Yeah." We haven't done anything really since we moved in. And I'd always be put down by a lot of people and told that I was stupid or, my opinion didn't count. But I always just went out and said, screw it, I want to go out and do stuff. I want to do genuine stuff, not just inane shite. I want to go out and actually live. I don't want to live on this yoke, which I have been doing quite a bit now, to be honest. And I think a lot of us have. My phone died last night and there was a bit of water in it, so I couldn't plug it into the charger immediately. But I kind of left it and I was glad because it gave me a little breather. You're just bombarded with so much negativity nowadays. And I think it's hard for you to actually move on, and because you're reminded of every mistake you make. So while I think, yeah, Sam Vaknin has a point, definitely. It's kind of hard not to live in such a negative environment. That's one that kind of got me because we used to do that as well, walking down, in the middle of grass verges and just getting up to all sorts of shite. Well, I'm kind of glad that we did because I feel like that's the time for messing up and making a fool of yourself. That was tragic to hear about this lad, Justin Pierce, and RIP to him and Harold Hunter over there because he's not a very good guy in the film, though. I will say nasty piece of work, does some nasty things. They all do, to be fair. They're not great people. Like, some of it you can put down to just being a kid, but they take advantage of young women and they talk sweet to them, but they just want to get the ride. You know what I mean? And you're kind of thinking that's something I can relate to a lot because that's exactly how lads were when I was growing up, and I was different, but I didn't admit that. I never admitted that because if you say that, they'll say, "Oh, what are you, a puffed or you're like a woman the way you talk." And I said it in other videos, but actually, when I was younger, I remember being able to connect more with women, young women my age, than men. But I wasn't necessarily attracted to them. I was attracted to women that were older, more. I always liked MILFs. That was always a thing for me. Just saying, it took me a while to get attracted to women my own age. Don't know what it was. I think I liked the majority. It was just something I liked because I liked having proper conversations and well, a lot of lads, that kind of thing. The only thing that really appealed to me was getting shit faced and talking shite, and that did genuinely appeal to me. And I've got a warped sense of humor, believe me. But I could talk drivel, but a lot of that has been developed, and especially through drinking alcohol. And it's just interesting looking back at this and thinking how many kids are going to miss out on, messing up genuinely and not being afraid that somebody's there, filming it. It got me just thinking, and I know I might not be making any sense here. I hope I am, but people were saying when they were talking about being a millennial, they were giving out about Gen Z, as everybody loves to do nowadays, and saying, "Oh, Gen Z will never understand what it's like to, go over and call for their mate." And I was like, I did that all the time. Me and my mates were seen as weirdos or oddballs. Even our nickname for our group chat was the In-Betweeners because we saw ourselves as the weirdos. If you haven't watched the In-Betweeners, it's a great show. Check it out. I absolutely loved that. That got me through school because I used to just go home and relate to so much of what they were saying. We weren't the cool kids, me and my mates put it that way. It was like I was good at sports, so that was my bargaining chip. But um, few of us, like a couple of us, played sports, so we had street cred. But that was kind of how I spent my youth. I was always training, always doing something productive, and I always wanted to get somewhere. But I feel like that was never encouraged, or it was like, there's somebody better than you. Who do you think you are? It took me a while to develop. I just kind of felt to myself, everybody is so boring on their phone, not doing anything of any importance, talking about what drugs they've taken or who they're going to shag. That was a lot of it, you know what I mean? Or a fight they got into with a group of their mates where they kicked one lad's head in. Like that to me is not living a life. Big man, you beat up, like they literally talk about beating up a homeless fella or something, or who they're gonna ride next, and what they got off a girl, and that was the thing. What did you get off her? We hear that all the time, don't we? Which I don't like, But if I say that, sure, my own dad would mock me for that. So he take the piss out of me for that. It's like that was the thing back when he was a kid as well. So, but dare I say anything about it? I was just told that shut up, you stop being a puff, you know, which is great, yeah. So I'm supposed to be misogynistic, am I? Unbelievable. But yeah, I'm very grateful now of all the experiences I had as a kid. We were running around, going to the shop, playing football, getting in a little bit of trouble, yeah, from time to time. But underage drinking, messing up, meeting girls, and I mean meeting as in, but anyone from Dublin will know. Did you meet her? For cultures, it's shift. Irish people will know what I'm talking about anyway. I don't know if anyone from outside of Ireland will have a clue what I'm saying, but kiss, just let's say kiss for argument's sake. But I always think as well of myself and looking at this, I kind of sound a bit like Larry Clarke because Larry, my brother always says I say Larry, but they say that he's permanently stuck in adolescence, because trying to live the life that he never had, and it's funny because sometimes I felt like that because I think being autistic, how much of life did I miss out on? But I was very aware of everybody else and what they were doing, and I wished I could connect to people. So I used to watch movies like this quite a bit when I was younger. I've watched this before, and not the full thing, and I really wanted to see the full film. I was looking around for ages, and I finally found a dodgy website that had the full movie. I don't think I'll be giving out any links to that, so I wouldn't trust them 100%. But just doing it ain't shite like this. So I always thought was fun, and I stopped sharing my screen now because I think I just wanted to show you that. But you're allowed to mess up as a kid, you're supposed to. Not now, not to the level that some of these lads do in the film, but nowadays, if you make a mistake, people are out, oh, look at this fella, look, and rather than actually doing anything, and I find it interesting that Sam Vaknin talks about actions mean nothing if your emotional state is different because maybe I've been getting it all wrong, but my motto was always being actions speak louder than words. People can mouth off. People have always mouthed it off to me, but they rarely do anything. Conor McGregor goes, "You'll do nothing." Yeah, we all love to say that. So many cringy lads copying him. Thank you, Conor, because of that. So many wannabe hard men have come out of the woodwork, but I was never good with my words, so I always felt action was more important. And I don't think anywhere it could be more obvious for that than the rugby pitch. Like someone would mouth off to me. I wouldn't be as quick with my words, but I'd hit them hard in a tackle. I'd shove their head into the ground, do something back to them. That was my way of doing it. But I was never quick with it like that. And I found if I waste my energy trying to say something quick back, I'll just look like a fool. So I used to think, well, better that we win the game and I actually do something rather than saying I'm going to do something. Does that make sense? So I have a hard time sitting with the idea that actions mean nothing because for me, action is everything. Because so many people have spoken a good game with me and promised me the world and delivered nothing. You do nothing, yeah. Oh, I cringe even when I say it, ironically. But yeah, nowadays I think it's hard to have a sense of purpose. And you see people, subdued, miserable, depressed young people. And I think the reason for it is that we see more negative shit from around the world than ever before. They always say your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. And the greatest strength that we have now with social media is I can connect with anyone around the world and communicate with them. Sure, I've done interviews with people who aren't even in the same country as me on this channel. So it'd be very hypocritical of me to say that social media is all bad. I don't think it is, but unfortunately, you can also see negativity all around the world. Like imagine as terrible as the incidents are from Palestine and Israel, we would not really know much about that before in the past. We wouldn't have heard about India and Pakistan. Now everyone's terrified of World War III coming. Um, and it does seem like a dystopian future already because we've made everything so convenient, but forgotten the importance of making an effort to do things. The whole thing that gives something meaning for me is the fact that you have to make an effort to do it. You know, like how many times do you actually have a conversation with a girl you like on this rather than meeting her in person? You probably spend more time communicating with her on that than you do in person. And ironically, even though I'm autistic and people would say, oh, yeah, but social interaction is awkward. And I would rather have a date in person with a girl that I like than talk to her online. I don't give a shit about talking to her online. I want to see her in person and I genuinely want to. Sam Vaknin made a very interesting point. I thought it was quite a good one. When he deals with a lot of young people and he does lectures and he was saying that a lot of young men, the way they speak about women is like masturbation tools. Now, he's talking about young people in general, so it seems like women are the same, but with young men in particular, basically just like women are there to serve my sexual desires. You know what I mean? It's like what? Yeah, and I know exactly what he means, but it's like why why would that be a goal in your life? I could never understand that, like what's your body count? When people say that, I was always like, if that's the only reason you're getting with a woman, then for one, anyone that would just want to be there so that you can get your body count up isn't worth being with. And two, if she really wants to be with you, pretty bad on your part to just use her so you can blow your load and that's it. Pump and dump, as they say. Nasty words, isn't it? I really need to stop. That sounds real sleazy, but I was never into that. And that was my problem. I'd always, if I kissed a girl, I wanted to marry her. I was like, don't leave me, I love you. But it's for me, it was never about the numbers game, and I mean, I wouldn't want it to be because I was brutal at that. It took me long enough to get out on the dating scene and whatever, so I wouldn't want to be playing body count with any guys because they'd be way ahead of me. I was playing catch up all the time, but I always wanted a relationship. That's always something I've wanted. Since I was very young, I'm a hopeless romantic. It's pathetic, isn't it? But yeah, I feel like the problem nowadays is that nobody has any values, no genuine values, and you see it, So I guess the way I was able to rethink what Sam Vaknin was saying was people had goals of starting families, raising good children, and passing on good values to them, and they'd live good lives, and there was a family dynamic there, and there was, a community, and you all backed each other up. You had people who were looking out for each other. Now, what you're saying, and I mean, this isn't Gen Z's fault, this is how they've been raised, is in single parent homes, which is not the norm. We become so used to saying it, but it's not actually normal. You're supposed to have a mother and a father, but we're so used to that not being there. And I mean, I know that all too well. And even like having a dad that doesn't teach you any values, you know, um, he didn't really, he didn't know what I meant when I said friends should have your back. It was a foreign concept to him. I was like, so no one has ever had your back, and you got to really see that. Look out for number one, and don't bother me, and don't get yourself in trouble or do anything that will make me look bad. I see a lot of cowardly people who don't have people's backs and run when they need them. And I often thought myself was quite cowardly because I didn't beat up someone for somebody else, but I didn't leave them. I stayed by their side and I didn't let them get beaten up. Because I was scared shitless a lot of times. I hadn't dealt with a lot of my own problems, and people will criticize you if you don't act, and they'll criticize you if you do act. Whenever I got into situations, people would run a mile and leave me on my own. So at least I never did that. I stood with the person I was with. I didn't stand with them and let them get battered, but I was there to help out. I didn't start throwing haymakers or nothing. But they say courage is being afraid to do something and doing it anyway. And I've done that loads of times. So many things scared me and I still persevered with them. Yeah, like it's interesting because I've had a lot of goals that I've achieved, and yet still there's an emptiness. There definitely is, and I don't really know who I am essentially or what my goals are because I think I've been splintered as a person or fractured because you don't grow up with a strong male role model, which I know I keep harping on about that, believe me. The irony is not lost on me, but you cannot express how damaging it is because then you have to rebuild it from scratch. And it's like, well, what is a good male? And that's something like might seem small, but males are a large part of society. And then what is it to be a woman? For me, I don't think it should be an acceptable thing that, couples cheat on each other and that's it. It's just accepted that people cheat on each other nowadays. It's accepted that people show up late. It's acceptable that people are rude and don't have decency. It shouldn't be, but it's become very acceptable. And we've allowed it to become acceptable, which is even worse. I was thinking how I'd make a video on this, but I feel like Sam Vaknin has given me the perfect blueprint to go off because I don't know where I stand in the world. Really, like I've been struggling recently, and there's been a lot going on. I'm finally making headway, and I'm meeting up with someone physically, not just online to go and have a tour of a place that I could potentially start a work placement in, and I'm delighted with that. Not what I was planning, but sure, I'm used to things changing and routines going out the window. Great for an autistic person, the routine always changing, but screw it, you gotta learn to adapt. I fully understand and accept that, life can't always work out the way you plan, but I am happy about that. But I just feel like I'm trying to be a good role model and I'm trying to help out young lads by coaching, and I'll be helping out young people in this new placement if I get it. And I think that's something that we've lost. Everybody's out for themselves nowadays, aren't they? And that's why we're seeing, I would say, the collapse of society. And I know that might sound extreme and dramatic, yeah, but people that look after their neighbours now, people are very passive and indifferent. And that's why I talked about autistic indifference. It's like I wish I could care and I wish I could give a shit about something. That's why I throw myself into so many different things, hoping that one will stick and I'll get value from it. You know what I mean? But it's not easy. It's very hard. And if you have a family where, when a family's good at something, like there's a family trait that they're good at, like all the men are plumbers or carpenters and they show you a trade and a master craftsman and they show you how to do everything. I didn't have that. And because of that, I feel very lost. I don't know what values to have because my dad never had the patience to teach me. My mum was always busy. There were no good men in the house to really help me out. And me and my brother were just left basically fend for ourselves in many ways. We had a mother that loved us and provided for us and, you know, brought us out places. We did have interactions with our family, but a lot of them tend to go, oh, don't worry, somebody else will deal with that, or that'll never happen. But what are you doing yourself to make sure, what are your values? Like, will you stand up for this? And I don't get that. I get a real sense of that's not my problem, it's somebody else's until it becomes my problem. You know what I mean? And we allow things to get to a certain level because of our inaction. Like what are our values? What are our beliefs? What do we stand for? Um, it's a question I've asked myself, and I don't really know sometimes, but I'd like to think one, my friends and family, but that has shifted a lot because of people I thought were good friends that have proved they're not, because of family members basically berating me for looking out for them, but not doing it in the way they think is appropriate. They've always got an answer. Everything's, you know, very simple the way they say it, but not everything is black and white. There's a grey area in there somewhere. I try and contribute to other people. I feel like giving back to others is important, and having a belief system is definitely important. Something that, and I guess Sam Vaknin is trying to say that something that is within you, so that you feel that you feel fulfilled, and that can never be changed. Because you can act and do something that you don't believe in, but that doesn't mean that's what you are essentially. What do you do that makes you a good person? Um, that's the question we need to ask ourselves, don't we? There's a lot of people out there pretending to be good people, but there's also a lot of misinformation bombarding you 24/7, and it's exhausting to listen to. Where we're misfed negative information so often now, and it's no wonder we're all depressed, and you can't get away from it. And whenever I go off my little wonderful portable device here, that's when people are always contacting me, and something I miss out on an important call because I decided to take a break from social media on my phone, and it's annoying, but it happens. And yeah, there's a lot of kids now that won't grow up with, being able to mess up and be a kid without someone filming it and posting it on social media, meeting girls and having experiences. Not encouraging underage drinking now, but just making a tit of yourself, getting into fights. um, there's all different things you can get involved in. Climbing trees, did that as well. Climb walls. Used to go up to the top of our green and smash bottles against a wall, which was a lot of fun. The teenage kids would leave lying around, but yeah, I'm glad that I got that experience. Because it does give me that sense of nostalgia. That I went out and I did stuff. I wasn't just insular, no friends, sitting in a corner reading on my own like a lot of autistic kids do, or playing my video games. I stopped playing video games a while ago. I find them boring, and they don't mean anything. If I watch a rugby match, that means something. If I play a rugby match, it means even more for me. If I work out, that's something I'm actually doing. I always found video games were a waste of time. I don't see what they actually really do. Maybe a bit of downtime, yeah, but you see a lot of people wasting their lives playing video games, and I don't see the point. It's like I watch movies that provoke thought in me, like kids, as they say. Um, it's like, what are they trying to do here? Going off riding as many girls as you can. What's your goal here? Yeah, and is it going to fulfill you? Because you can see at the end, Telly, Leo Fitzpatrick's character says, goes, I love fucking take that away. I got nothing. He's from New Jersey, Leo Fitzpatrick, so he's got a thick accent. And he goes, take that away. I ain't got nothing. But yeah, he's just going out to deflower as many girls as he can. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's your goal in life. And a lot of lads were like that. That I grew up with, especially in my teenage years, was like they treated their girlfriends like shit. They cheated on them all the time, and yet these girls kept coming back. And I was like, I'm actually treating you decently, and you're going back to this fella. I couldn't get my head around it, but I guess they believe that's how fellas are supposed to behave. But yeah, look, what has society come to? It's quite messed up at the minute. I had a really good day today, and I was swimming and out in nature, which I do a lot of, and I'm blessed to be where I am in the world. So very grateful for that. Very grateful. Especially in the current state of affairs. The world is not a happy place. And while it was a relief to hear Sam Vaknin talking about what he was talking about, it is worrying. And how do we fix it? What is the solution? Like, I don't know. I think that's well above my pay grade, but I think give people genuine values, like something to aspire to. They're not saying that, they don't know what it is because they're not saying it. They're saying most families are breaking up. There's only one parent there. People are not committing to anything. Fathers can't commit to a household. Unfortunately, a lot of mothers have to raise the families on their own, which is not what you should be showing. You're basically teaching young men that they can treat women how they want and there'll be no consequences and they can piss off whenever they're unhappy rather than sticking together for the good of the family. And look, I know people fall out of love, but as I've spoken about plenty of times on this channel, like if you don't give a young man good male role models to start off with, they're going to seek them out in the wrong places, which leads to very weak men and very dangerous weak men. Yeah. So if you raise people who, all they prioritize is going out to get money so that they can get pissed at the weekend, get high, shag someone, gamble all their savings away, whatever. What are you contributing? You're going out, you're going to work. Yeah, okay, you're making a bit of money and then you're pissing it all away. As soon as you get it, you do that week in, week out. You go on a few holidays a year. Your body's in bits, you're in bits, and seems like a waste of life to me. That never appealed to me. When people would say, get yourself a job, and these are the best years of your life. My teenage years were certainly not the best years of my life. There's a lot of good times though, that I am grateful for 100%. And I appreciate them now looking back on them. And I'm glad that I went out of my comfort zone and tried to be something else, and do something, not just be insular, and withdraw into myself, because that wouldn't have got me anywhere. As tough as it was, and it was very tough, especially being neurodivergent, it's very difficult, but glad that I put myself out there. I think I have a unique perspective on everything because I did that. Life gives you a lot of experiences that you can't learn from a book. And I think, like, people assume when they hear I'm autistic that I'm going to be into IT, video games. When I say I play rugby, they assume I play for the special team. And I was like, no, I actually played for the firsts. I played with fully grown men at 18. I was in the first team. I got man the match in a few games. I played well. I was good, um, because I pushed myself, and that's something that I actually don't think a lot of people have. Is that ability to push themselves. Like a lot of people would socialize and won't experience the difficulties I did. They'll come naturally to them. That's not pushing yourself. Some people are naturally more confident. It doesn't scare them going into a big room. It used to terrify me. Now I can do these videos because I pushed myself. You'll grow from it. And I still get there days, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of people I see not pushing themselves and going into the comfort zone. And that's where dreams go to die, which I've heard said by many people. I get a job with my dad, I get a job with my uncle's company, I get a job at daddy's bank, or I know a guy who can give me a job here, or one thing like I say with rugby a lot is that I play for the best team. We're always winning everything, and then I go into another team and another. I get a scholarship here. My arse is wiped for me. Doesn't matter if I fail all my classes because and my new guys like this, life would just work out for them regardless of what they did. They didn't even bother studying. They didn't care about their degree, but because they were good at sport, they got everything handed to them. And I was pissed off that wasn't me, but unfortunately, I got the wrong degree. I got one that required a lot of actual study and attention, but I'm grateful for that because that taught me the value of putting in the hard work. I was able to train, I was always able to put in physical graft and hard work, but college taught me that I had to study, and do something I wasn't comfortable with, which was to put the head down into the books and So I got valuable lessons from that, and as I say, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Very proud of myself, and eventually I will find something. I think we've lost that. People are not pushing themselves like they should. They're not going out of the comfort zone. If I'm good at something, I'll stick to that, but I'm not going out where I'm not comfortable. You know what I mean? And you'll never develop as a person unless you do that. And I don't feel like we're being encouraged to do that. So that would be my biggest thing to start with: is do something you're not comfortable with. Don't just go, I'm not doing that. That's stupid. I hear a lot of young people saying that, not doing that, and just acting like I couldn't be arsed, when reality what you mean is I'm terrified and I'm absolutely bricking it. But that's uncool, isn't it? So you have to say, I'm not arsed, play it off, when in reality you're shitting yourself and you're too cowardly to admit that. Let's start there. All right, guys. I'll leave it on that. Dan's life advice. Well, I certainly need to work on that myself, but I hope you guys got something from this. I certainly felt like this was important to say. So let's see you in the next one, guys.